Hi, it's Mark Owen from Moose Marketing PR, the editor of Punchline magazine. Welcome to Punchline Talks, the business breakfast briefers, where each week I invite on a panel of experts to review the morning newspapers, find out what's going on in their own individual businesses and own individual business sectors, and finally, what's caught their eye in this week's Punchline. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. And before I start and before I introduce the panel, I'd just like to thank our sponsors, Hazelwood's, accountants, and business advisors, and nice guys to boot. Anyway, let's have a look at the papers. Oh, sorry, let's introduce the panel. Lost my way already. We've got Simon Pigott, Director of Swann Financial, Chris Nelson, Police and Crime Commissioner for Gloucestershire, VIKKI WALTERS, Strategic Lead for Inclusion Employment of Gloucestershire County Council, and Matthew Pritchard, Director of Customer Engagement at Ontic. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Let's have a quick look at the newspapers headlines, courtesy of the BBC. We'll quickly, let's be honest, we all know it's about Harry and Meghan this morning. Palace anger at assault on Queen's legacy, says the Daily Mail. The Daily Express, so hurtful, royals deeply upset by Harry's slurs. The Times, Palace and Netflix clash over Sussex soap opera. The Daily Telegraph, Sussex TV show claims a direct hit on the late Queen's legacy. The Metro, royals don't marry for love. The Mirror, stop this royal circus. The Daily Star is not as good as homes under the hammer, says the Daily Star. The Guardian, again, TV, renewed frenzy, but the story remains the same. Apparently they gave them 3 out of 5 star review. The Financial Times, Hunt loosens financial services rules to free city potential as growth driver. And the Eye, new anti-strike laws could make strikes worse, admits the government. Okay, that's a roundup of the front covers of the papers today. We're going to start with Chris this morning. Good morning, Chris.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, good morning over the rest of the panel. Thanks ever so much for joining us. What have you picked out for the papers, please, sir?
Well, when I went round to my local petrol station to get my papers, it was difficult to try and choose a paper that wasn't covering the Harry and Meghan story. But in the Telegraph, I caught my eye the story about Meghan's mother, who apparently comes out quite well from the 3 hours of documentary. A nice little story there in the Telegraph. And then my eye was caught by the last dam buster dies at the age of 101 in Bristol, Johnny Johnson. That always is a story, the dam busters, that I love. And I used to serve out in Germany in Dortmund, and would go and visit the dams there and see from the locals' point of view. Another couple of stories that caught my eye: Tutankhamun's face revealed for the first time, which I thought was fascinating. And dogs. There's a story that there's only really 10 different types of dog, and that it's not hundreds and hundreds of different types of dog. So those are the stories that caught my eye.
A bit like this show is going to the dogs. So I've got to quickly ask the panel, who's seen the show? Vicky, have you seen the show? Meghan, would you watch it? Oh, I'll ask Matthew. Matthew.
Sorry, sorry. Oh, cat. So I'm so sorry, Mark. Yeah, I watched 20 minutes. That was it. 20 minutes, and then I had to turn it off. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. But, Matthew, did you watch the show?
Not in the slightest bit interested. I mean, isn't it just television version of Hello Magazine, right?
Simon, what about yourself?
Yes, I watched it. I did watch it.
And what did you think?
I don't think there's any substance to it at all. You know, there's a lot of. It actually made me laugh out loud on 2 or 3 occasions. It's so cliched and nothing new. I don't really know what their point that they're trying to get across is. Going back into the Commonwealth and how racist the royal family is. It just seems to me like playing a great big race card, if I'm honest.
Okay, well, that's the view. I'm not sure I'm going to be bothered to watch it. I'm enjoying the Crown though. Anyway, let's go over to you, Vicky. What have you picked out from the papers, please?
Okay, so I picked out, again, I struggled to find something that wasn't related to Meghan and Harry. The headline, "You can't afford to retire early, over 50s could be warned in back to work drive." So this is kind of around that us middle-aged people are not going to be able to afford to retire, that we're not going to have enough cash to see us through our retirement. And I think it's really interesting, especially as one of the stats they put in here saying that the number of people, there's now over 3 million people aged 50 to 64 who are unemployed or out of the labour market. And we know that 500,000 people left the labour market nationally between the beginning, since the pandemic. But 90% of them now of over 50s are looking to get back into the labour market. So we know that we've got this huge problem at the moment that we can't fill vacancies, that there's just huge, people are really struggling to recruit, us included. We also know that ageism is real. So when you get over 50, people kind of then start to question about you coming in, and then the recent skills. But it's really about, I'm a massive fan of the kind of intergenerational stuff. And I think that if I'm over 50 and I wanted to retire at 55, I don't feel like I would want to retire now. I think I have so much to bring to the workforce. And I think that we're going to have to start thinking about how we can draw people who are aged 50 back into the workforce and look at what they can bring. They might not have the most recent skills, but they just bring such a wealth of knowledge, wisdom, and can teach so many things. So that was the big thing for me, was around that over 50s. And I just want to say, with the Employment Skills Hub, we have definitely seen the last few months a rise in the number of 50 plus year olds actually wanting to our support to get them back, and that's partly driven by the cost of living crisis as well. And I think that's had a major impact on people wanting to return.
Okay.
So that was my big story.
All right, thanks very much, Vicky. Well, that leads me very nice on, and obviously, to our pensions and retirement expert, actually. But we won't go into that right now, Simon. It's almost like she queued it up for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, thanks for that, Vicky. It's very true, though, because you see the government moving the goalposts all the time from the retirement age from 65, 66, 67. That'll be moved up to 68 next year. I think people are just going to be retiring later. And like you say, what you can't teach is experience for people. But yeah, the two I picked out two. One was more of a personal one, and one was a professional one. The personal one was poor old Cristiano Ronaldo. I just hope he manages to retire from football gracefully, because he's been such a fantastic player, probably one of the best players we've all seen. And now the same seems to be happening with Portugal as did with Man United. So I just hope he manages to go out of the game gracefully, because it would be a great shame otherwise. And the other one was the biggest drop in house prices for 14 years. And I know I get on my soapbox about the media, but the biggest house price fall is that it only went up 4.7% last month. Because it dropped from 8.2 the previous month. I just find it irresponsible journalism. So I've got my high horse about that one.
Thankfully, you didn't read that in Punchline, is all I can say about that.
I didn't.
Okay, well, thank you ever so much for that. Matthew, it's great to have you on the show. Thanks for joining us. What have you picked out from the papers today or online?
I've got a story. It's quite widely covered yesterday, around the last ever Boeing 747 jumbo jet rolled off the production line in Seattle yesterday. And I think for a lot of people, that's probably a little bit surprising, given the first one was produced in 1969. And here we are, 1,500 aeroplanes later, the last one ever produced. And Boeing have had a lot of woes over the last couple of years, but it's actually sort of quite refreshing to see a story that really sort of celebrates their role in the industry. And I think it's particularly interesting, this one, because I think it says a few things. One, how long these things go for, and how long these airplanes are built for, and how long they fly for. I've been personally involved with the Boeing 777, for example, something designed in the early 90s. And first delivered in the mid-90s. It's still in production now, and there's still 2 or 3 rolling off the production line every month. These huge sort of transatlantic jets. And the last one will probably roll off the production line in a few years, and we'll still be flying people around in 2050, 2060. So, you know, you think about consumer electronics or white goods and the pace of change, and even cars every 5 or 6 years. In aerospace, it's a lot slower. I think the other thing that's interesting as well is just the sheer complexity. I mean, these huge machines, the industrial engineering effort required to pull all these parts from all over the world, and a lot of them from Gloucestershire, sort of funnily enough, to assemble these incredibly complex machines, you know, several times a month, somewhere in the world. You know, 120 airliners roll off a production line every single month. You know, the industrial effort required to make that happen is incredible. And I suppose the last point, very much a trend. You know, it's the end of the big sort of 4-engined transporters. I mean, the drive towards sustainability now. You know, by 2050, 2060, we're going to be flying around in electrically powered or hydrogen powered aeroplanes. And, you know, you could say the last 747 rolling off the production line is sort of the end of the oil age almost in mass transport. So, you know, sad times for anyone, you know, any enthusiast or anyone in the industry, but also a sign of sort of positive change, I think.
I mean, it's actually amazing, it from 1969, so that was like 5 years just after I was born. And these things are still going around. I remember actually I had a flight when I was in the Air Force years ago in a Shackleton. Remember Shackleton airplane? I went in one of those from RAF Lossiemouth.
Yeah.
It's quite an amazing, and an Andover as well. Remember an Andover?
Yeah.
Jersey and an Andover. I used to be the pilots of those things. But no, absolutely amazing, isn't it? And you're right what you said. There was so much aviation in this county. That, you know, every corner of the county, it seems to be doing something to do with the aviation industry, isn't it? And of course, you guys are there as well.
Just think about these things, these huge things. They need engines, they need wheels, they need landing gears, computers, electronics, air conditioners, TVs for the back of the seats, kettles, coffee machines. I mean, it's just you're like building a small town every couple of months in these big hangars.
No, it's absolutely amazing, isn't it?
It's incredible.
Thanks ever so much for that, Matthew. Let's go back over to Chris then, Chris, and let's talk about the Police and Crime Commission and your role there. Now, at the moment, you've got a survey out, haven't you? Because we're looking at, let's be honest, there is this cost of living squeeze. There is pressure on all the services, and I believe you want to go out and ask for more money from the general public. Can you explain about that, please?
Yeah, we've got a survey out now all about perceptions of crime. We're interested to listen to what people think about crime in their area, where they think it's a problem, what more can be done. And we also ask some questions about the precept, the police precept, the council tax that people pay, and whether people are up for paying a bit more or not. And if they are prepared to pay a bit more, what would they like to see the money spent on? Inflation is about 10 or 11% at the moment. Cost of living is quite high. So just keeping things going as we have been requires extra money. Last year, I increased council tax by £10 across the year, is about 20p a week. That equates to about 3.5%, and really doesn't cover clearly inflation.
Okay, so what are you looking for now? You know, so how much money did you raise? Have you got those figures for us, Chris? Last time when you put it £10, and what are you hoping to raise it to this time?
Well, obviously, in a consultation, I listen. But last year, our budget was looking across 3 years, and for this year, we also put into the budget a £10 increase. Now, next week, we will get information from the government on the grant for police, and they'll also talk about what we're allowed to do on the precept. And I'll be paying very close attention to that as I listen to people's responses within the consultation. and then we'll sort of put it all together, jumble it all up, and then try and figure out what's the best way to manage the budget. You know, what can people cope with in our community, because we're all suffering with cost of living increases. But I was given a very strong mandate 18 months ago to strengthen the constabulary, grow the constabulary, and I'm determined to do that.
And how are the numbers looking at? Because obviously you came in on the mandate of getting 300 odd police officers. What's that looking like? Never mind about the ones leaving, because there is that natural flow out the door. How's it looking about in the door?
Well, with current plans, I've funded just over 280, and I think some stage next year I'll exceed that 300 target. But everywhere I look within the constabulary, they're short of officers, they're short of police staff, and I think I'll have to go further.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you're trying to recruit more PSOs as well. Do you think there'd be a scope to increase their powers?
That's always something I talk to the chief about. I know we've talked about it before. My current plans are to increase the police community support officer strength by about 20%. I should get to there by about next summer. I am a huge fan of PCSOs. Sadly, some of my colleagues, other commissioners around the country, when they're looking at their budget situation, they're talking to me about cutting PCSOs and replacing them with the extra police constables they've got on the 20,000 national uplift. And I think that's a wrong decision. I think PCSOs are at the core of neighbourhood policing, and they're all about crime prevention, which is something I really passionately believe in.
Okay, well, thanks ever so much for that. Chris, thanks ever so much for coming on the show as well. That leads us back over to Vicky, and you know, because we talk about recruitment, we talk about retention, we talk about, you know, the jobs market. Tell us about the skills hub, please. That's that lovely council building that is just off, where's it, Southgate Street, something like that, near the docks. You're muted.
I do that because, sorry about that. Yeah, no, Commercial Road. So the Employment Skills Hub based on Commercial Road, very close to the bike project, just a couple of doors up from the bike project. So yeah, so we've been going now for just over a year, and we've had well over 400 people now accessing the hub. So it's basically a front door. Which any resident, regardless of whether they're employed, unemployed, in education, a parent of a young person, can come in and get information, advice and guidance around employment skills. So it can range from signposting people to the right person who can help them. So if they just want some information, advice, so we work with a whole range of partners across the county. But within that, we also have some sort of specialist programs and services that support people, for example, with disabilities. Our forward service, a lot well established. Young people who are not in education, employment and training, care leavers, people aged over 50, veterans, anybody really. I think we've got a program now that can probably help most people. But then we work very, very closely with DWP and other kind of employment and skills support. And obviously we've got adult education in the same building, so we have access to you know, an amazing kind of number of different skills options and things like that. And we go out into communities as well, so we use the library network to deliver across communities. And I'm just about to launch, or it started on 1st of December, a new project which replaces the really successful GEM project that we had, which a lot of people kind of have heard about. So eShow, which will then go out delivered by the voluntary and community sector, and that will go out into communities right across the county to offer support for those who are economically inactive.
I mean,
so
some of the work that you've done in the past, that you and I have been involved with the forwards, some of the guys like Chris and Simon and Matthew probably don't realise also, is about this helping people with disabilities into the workplace, isn't it? Because people see, sometimes you don't see the disability, you know, everybody has the opportunity to work. Could you just explain how that kind of works just very quickly, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, quite often it's not actually the person's disability that is the issue, because we have obviously you've got disability discrimination law, which supports you know, kind of entry into the workplace to make sure that people have reasonable adjustments and that type of thing. It's quite often the environment. So sometimes it's around stigma, prejudice, assumptions and that type of thing. So we will work with employers and individuals to sort of identify what some of the challenges are, and then work with employers to try and facilitate kind of, like I said, reasonable adjustment to make sure that people can it's about creating equal access to opportunities. So what we want to do is, some people need a little bit of extra support, that's fine, we come in and we facilitate that, and then that creates that kind of equal level playing field for people to come in.
And it's also,
so, I mean, everyone has amazing skills, and it's about what they can bring to the workplace, and not necessarily what their recent work history is or that type of thing. It's about them and what they can actually bring, and different people bring different things, and it's appreciating that, I guess.
okay, thanks ever so much. So there's just a snapshot of all the great work that you do. Thanks ever so much for that, Vicky. It takes me over to Simon. And obviously we talked about the retirement. Now the stock market's been on a, you know, on a bit of a slide. It's been a bit of a roller coaster, and thinking, oh my goodness, what about my pension? What about how am I going to retire early? What's the sort of marketplace at the moment there at Swann Financial? What are you seeing, Simon?
Well, I think for us, people need good, sound financial advice more when times are troubled than perhaps when things are easy. So, you know, and legislation changes all the time. So with our clients, we tend to make sure we see them a couple of times a year, to keep in touch, make sure they're on track to fulfill their objectives that they had at the start. And I just, you know, always say to people, I'm a bit like a broken record. It's, you know, you don't panic during these times. I think it was Warren Buffett said, the stock market is a place where patient people make money from impatient people. And it's just about, you know, longevity. If you're invested in equities, then you have to be in it for the long term.
And are you seeing more people trying to retire early? Is there, you know, because of COVID, because of different various things, or are more people, like Vicky said, trying to go back into the workplace? I mean, now, are people sorted or not?
Well, I think that the generation we're in at the moment of people retiring will probably be okay. I think it's the younger generations that are going to struggle. Pensions, you know, we've all been there. We're too young to save into a pension. Whether there'll be even a state pension when those people come to retire is a different matter. But even with company schemes, you know, they're diminishing massively, company pension schemes. So, you know, that need for advice is even greater.
And you know, moving forward, if you're a sort of company director like me, when do you think you should start planning to retire? You know, is there a sort of time scale at all? Is it 5, 7, 10 years beforehand?
From when you start work? Yeah, about 18.
Okay.
I mean, they say, you know, 10% of your salary into a pension from the day you start work will give you a healthy retirement. And joking aside, that's probably realistic.
Okay.
You know, if you start planning, sorry, Mark.
No, I put 10% in the pub. That's what I did last year.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right, and that's why I say you can't really sort of say to young people. But you know, if they're in company schemes, then they'll get it stopped automatically.
Yeah, that's right. No, thanks ever so much for that, Simon. It's that's always great to get your input on there from Swann Financial. Matthew, welcome to Punchline Talks again, and let's talk about Ontic. I'm going to bring up the screen, please, so we can have a chat. I'm going to bring up this. So there's one of your HQs. Now, a lot of people might have seen the building. Whereabouts is this?
So that's at Staverton, and you can see behind the building there. That's the runway at Staverton Airport. So we bought this facility almost exactly a year ago. So we've been in this building for a year now, and this is where we do all of our sort of actuation systems. So this is the equipment and the valves and that sort of move things on the aeroplane. You know, either move surfaces on wings or lift up air brakes or whatever that is. So yeah, it's a fantastic facility. We've got about 150 people in there at the moment, but there's room for probably 350 over time. And that's our plan. You know, we bought it last year and we plan to sort of fill it over the next 2 or 3 years. Which
So who are Ontic and what do we do, if you don't mind? Let's start from the very beginning.
No, I mean, so we're an original equipment manufacturer. So we started in California several decades ago, supplying a lot of parts to the US government and US military. Expanded over time. You know, historically, the organization sort of doubled in size every 3 or 4 years. But first got into the UK about 10 years ago. We bought a bit of the old Smiths aerospace business in Bishop's Cleeve, which is now, of course, GE. And we established a facility there. And in the last 10 years, we filled that facility with another sort of 15 or 16 acquisitions, grew it to about 350 people. And it got to a point where we had no more room for growth, and we came across Staverton. But we produce things for customers all over the world. So about, let's say 50-50 commercial and military. On the commercial side, we sell a lot of equipment to people like Boeing and Airbus. That's everything from electronics and fuel measurement systems, very delicate sort of cockpit instruments that give you sort of height and speed measurements, things like that. And then right through on the military side, supplying people like BAE Systems on the Typhoon and Hawk. They've got a significant operation in Lancashire, just outside sort of Blackpool, in a place called Wharton. They're one of our big customers. So a lot of highly engineered product. We're about 1,000 people globally now across 7 different facilities. Like I say, 2 of those are here in Gloucestershire. It's been a tremendous success story, and it's been, really engaging to be a part of it. And
it must be difficult to find engineers and apprenticeships, and because you are doing an apprenticeship program at the moment, aren't you? An apprenticeship recruitment drive. How many guys are you actually after?
We're after about 20 this year. So, in my old role, I was the general manager of the UK operation for several years, and we started an apprenticeship scheme 5 or 6 years ago with just 2 or 3 apprentices, and they're still with us in sort of more prominent engineering roles now. So they've come through the business. Some of them are even working in the US now and relocated with their families to be part of our growth over there. But yes, it's just one of those, the skills we need are of a certain vintage now. The future of aerospace is becoming a lot more electronic, a lot more complex. But a lot of what we make, is still in very, very high demand and will be for a long time. But it requires skills that, aren't necessarily easy to come across now. So whether that's engineering or quality technicians or manufacturing technicians, it's just absolutely critical for us to recruit young and develop those skills and talents, through the organization over years. And we've been able to create lots of opportunities for them, as we've developed them. And they seem to enjoy themselves, which is, key.
I mean, the thing about it is there are so many great aviation businesses here, and they're all feeding off each other. Thanks so much, Matthew. That's just a snapshot of what you do. And now we'll obviously get you back on the show again next year and talk about it a bit more. Okay, we're kind of running out of time, guys. So let's quickly wrap through the what's caught your eye in this week's punchline. Chris, we'll start with you, please. What's the story that caught your eye?
I thought I'd stay on message. You did a story about the relaunch of the Road Safety Partnership, which we do with the County Council, and that plays an important role keeping people safe on our roads. We've got lots of initiatives, community speed watch, new technology, cameras and things like that. So I'm really pleased that that's been relaunched and will make a big difference going forwards.
Okay, no, great campaign as always. Thanks ever so much for that, Chris. Vicky, what's caught your eye in this week's punch?
B&Q opening local stores, because B&Q is my worst nightmare next to Asda, and never know which exit to park outside of, where you're not going to carry things forever. So yeah, having a smaller local store, absolutely.
It's so you'll know which entrance and entry, exit and entry to go to. That's why you like it.
Not just that, kind of, there's just too much stuff in there. I don't, you go in for something that's 3 inches wide and you've got multiple choice, and I'm not don't know really what I'm looking for. It's the most stressful thing, B&Q. Try to avoid it.
Fair enough. I love B&Q in Gloucester. I'd like to spend, a good half hour wandering around the shelves, not buying anything. Really sad, really thinking, I wish I worked here. Right, anyway, thanks so much for that. Simon, what's caught your eye this week at Punch?
I thought a little bit of good news. The Pied Piper will appoint 2 new trustees. I don't know. I know Jonathan Viney comes on the show regularly, and I know personally from the golf club, and Marcus Gomery from Brunston's Financial, one of our competitors. Again, a great guy who comes on from Brickhampton Golf Club. Both have done a lot of fundraising, and the Pied Piper Appeal, which is an absolutely fantastic local charity. They say charity begins at home, and Nick Brodie and the team there at Pied Piper do a great job for Gloucestershire. We have our own foundation at St James's Place, and we raise something like £20 million a year, so charity's close to my heart. And we actually donated £1 million to Milestone School a couple of years ago to help them finish off their facility there. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody knows about Pied Piper, but yeah, I thought that was a nice article, Mark. That was.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, Matthew, what's caught your eye?
£5.9 million of new funding for cyber and digital skills at the University of Gloucestershire. I mean, like I said, anything that produces more STEM graduates in the local area is great for so many businesses and industries in this part of the world. So that's a great bit of news, and looking forward to seeing some positive outcomes from that.
That's some fantastic investment in our universities at the moment, right across the board. No, thanks, couldn't agree more with that. My story of the week has to be that Labour have chosen their candidate to contest the next Gloucester seat. And what's interesting, he's a 30-year-old solicitor. I don't want to get into politics. Mr. McInty, who lives in Cam with his wife. He said we had 12 years of mismanagement of the economy and of public services. I'm looking forward to challenging of winning Gloucester for Labour and fighting for a brighter future for our city. And what made me chuckle is that he's from Yorkshire. He predominantly works in the NHS in London, and he lives in Cam.
Yeah.
We'll look forward to that then.
Good local candidate.
Good luck with that, mate. I mean, what else can you say? Thanks ever so much to my panel. Thanks ever so much to our fantastic sponsors, and hopefully you'll join us next week. And have a nice day. I can't remember what I was going to say at the end. If you like the show, please like, share, and subscribe. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.
Cheers. See you.
Bye.
Bye.